You're 47 years old and you've been dying slowly for the last 20 years. You just didn't know it until now. You grew up in a fishing village in Galicia, Spain, where your father was a fisherman and his father before him and his father before him. 4 generations of men who smelled like salt and diesel and came home with empty eyes and calloused hands. You were the first one to leave, the first one to see the world beyond the breakwater, the first one to get an education, a real one, Maritime Academy in Cadiz, navigation certification, engineering credentials, a future that didn't involve gutting fish until your knuckles swelled. You joined the merchant marine at 22, and for 15 years you sailed every ocean on Earth, tankers and container ships and LNG carriers, massive vessels the size of shopping malls that moved across the water like cities on the move. You made good money, married a woman from Bilbao named Elena, had a daughter you named after your mother, bought an apartment with a view of the harbor, lived the life you were supposed to live. Then the shipping industry collapsed in 2008, and you were laid off with 300 other captains, and nobody was hiring, and your credentials meant nothing when every shipping company in the world was hemorrhaging money and selling vessels for scrap. You burned through your savings in 18 months, sold the apartment, watched Alina leave with your daughter, watched her take the girl to Valencia to live with her mother, watched your whole life get packed into cardboard boxes and driven away on a truck you couldn't afford to hire. You took whatever work you could find after that, fishing boats back in Galicia. The same work your father did, the same work you swore you'd never do, 14-hour shifts hauling nets, sleeping in bunks that smelled like sweat and rot, drinking cheap brandy to kill the humiliation. That's where they found you, on a dock in Vigo at 3 in the morning, unloading a catch worth maybe 2,000 euros split 8 ways. A man named Diego, who you remembered from childhood, who remembered you from before, who looked at your hands and your face and your eyes, and saw exactly what you'd become. He bought you coffee, real coffee, not the instant shit you'd been drinking, and he asked you a simple question. How much do you make in a year? You told him the truth. Maybe 25,000 euros when the fishing was good, less when it wasn't, and he laughed, not cruelly, just with the knowledge of someone who understood something you didn't. He said he could pay you 25,000 euros in a single week for work you already knew how to do, work you were certified for, work that required a captain with your specific skills and your specific desperation and your specific silence. You asked what kind of work, and he said the kind you don't ask about. The kind where you follow coordinates and pick up packages and deliver them to coordinates and never know what's in the packages and never ask who's receiving them and never wonder about any of it. Because wondering is how men end up feeding fish instead of catching them. You said yes because you had 47 euros in your pocket and a daughter in Valencia who needed school supplies and an ex-wife who didn't answer your calls anymore and a body that was already starting to fail you from years of hard living and cheap alcohol. The first run was easy, almost embarrassingly easy. A submarine, a real one. A 30-meter vessel built in a secret shipyard in Colombia, designed for one purpose only, to move product underwater where radar can't see and satellites can't find and navies don't look. You spent 3 weeks learning the systems, the battery arrays that let it run silent, the ballast controls that let it sit on the ocean floor for days, the escape protocols if something went wrong, the scuttling charges if something went really wrong. Your crew was 4 men, all Colombian, all former fishermen like you, all with families in towns you'd never heard of, all with the same desperate eyes you saw in the mirror every morning. The first load was 6 tons of cocaine, packed in waterproof bales, worth maybe $200 million on the street in Europe, worth maybe $3 million to the men who hired you, worth your life if you failed. You navigated from a hidden cove near Tumaco, Colombia, up the Pacific coast, past Mexico, past the U.S., all the way to Arendezvous Point, 200 miles off the coast of Portugal, 17 days underwater, 17 days breathing recycled air, 17 days listening to the hull creak and groan under pressure that could kill you in seconds if the welds failed. You made 150,000 euros for that run, more money than you'd made in the last 5 years combined. And when you got back to Spain, you rented an apartment in a town where nobody knew you, bought a car that didn't smell like fish, sent money to Valencia for the first time in years, got a response from your daughter, a text message that just said, "Thanks, Papa." You told yourself it was just one run, just enough to get back on your feet, just enough to prove you could still provide, just enough to feel like a man again. But the cartel doesn't let good captains walk away. They don't let anyone walk away, especially not someone who knows the routes and the coordinates and the Rendezvous points and the names of the men in Colombia who built the sub. Diego called you 3 weeks later with another offer, 200,000 euros this time, same route, same sub, same crew, just one more run and then you're done, just one more and you're out, just one more and you never have to do it again. You knew it was a lie. You knew there was no such thing as one more. You knew that every run made you more valuable to them and more trapped by them and more impossible to ever leave, but you said yes anyway because saying no meant going back to the fishing boats, saying no meant going back to 47 euros, saying no meant going back to being nobody. The second run was harder, not technically. Technically it was the same, but psychologically it was different because now you knew what you were doing. Now you couldn't pretend you were just a sailor following orders. Now you had to sit with the knowledge that 6 tons of cocaine would destroy thousands of lives, would fund murders and extortion and corruption, would end up in the noses and veins of kids the same age as your daughter. You told yourself it wasn't your problem. You told yourself you were just transportation. You told yourself the drugs would get there anyway, with or without you. You told yourself the same lies every man tells himself when he's selling his soul in installments. The third run was to Africa, a new route, a new sub, a new crew, 8 tons this time, destined for the West African coast where it would be broken down and shipped north to Europe through Morocco and Spain and Italy. You made 300,000 euros for that run, and by now you had over 500,000 saved, enough to buy a house, enough to start a business, enough to walk away forever if you could just figure out how to walk away without dying. You started thinking about escape plans around run number 5. By then you'd made over 1,000,000 euros. By then you'd moved your daughter to a better school. By then you'd bought a house in Valencia near Elena so you could see your girl every weekend. By then you'd built a life that looked almost normal from the outside. But normal people don't have to disappear. Normal people don't have to change their phones every 3 months. Normal people don't have to look over their shoulders every time they walk to their car. Normal people don't have nightmares about submarines crushed at the bottom of the ocean with their lungs collapsed and their eyes bleeding. The cartel owns you by run number 7, not legally, not contractually, but actually, really, completely. Because you know too much now. You've met too many people, you've seen too many faces, you've heard too many names. You've been to the secret shipyard in Colombia where they build the subs. You've met the engineers who design the battery systems. You've drunk beer with the men who load the cargo. You've become part of the infrastructure. They don't need to threaten you. They don't need to intimidate you. They just need to remind you gently, casually, that you know things that would get you killed if anyone else knew you knew them, that you've committed crimes that carry life sentences in 7 countries, that your daughter's school is 3 blocks from her house and her mother works until 6 and she walks home alone every day. You don't get threatened, you get reminded, you get told about a new route, a new sub, a new opportunity, and you say yes because saying no isn't really an option anymore. The 9th run almost kills you, literally almost kills you, 300 miles off the coast of Portugal, 2 in the morning, depth 50 meters, when the port motor seizes and starts spewing smoke, and the electrical system starts failing and the lights go out, and you're sitting in total darkness 150 feet underwater, with 8 tons of cocaine and 4 panicking Colombians and the unmistakable sound of the ocean trying to crush your tin can. You get the motor stabilized, you get the lights back, you get the sub to the surface, you get the cargo delivered. But for 6 hours you sat in the dark listening to the hull groan, and you realized something fundamental about your life. You realized you're already dead. You just haven't stopped breathing yet. The 11th run is when you meet the American, not on the sub, on land, in a bar in Lisbon. A man who buys you a drink and shows you a badge and tells you he knows exactly who you are and exactly what you do and exactly how much you've made and exactly where your daughter goes to school. He's DA, or he says he's DEA. He could be anything. He could be CIA. He could be Spanish intelligence. He could be a rival cartel fishing for information. He could be anyone, but he knows your name and that's enough. He offers you a deal, cooperation in exchange for immunity, witness protection for you and your family, a new life in a new country with a new name and a new future. All you have to do is help them take down the organization. All you have to do is wear a wire. All you have to do is betray men who trusted you. All you have to do is become the thing you hate most. You say you need time to think. He says you have 72 hours. He gives you a number. He disappears into the Lisbon night, and you sit in that bar for 3 hours drinking whiskey you can't taste, trying to calculate the odds, trying to find a path out that doesn't end with you dead or your daughter motherless. The cartel finds out about the meeting. Of course they find out. They have people everywhere. They have eyes in every port. They have informants in every government agency. They have reach that extends into places you can't imagine. Diego calls you the next morning and his voice is different, colder, more precise. He asks you about Lisbon. He asks you about the bar. He asks you about the American, and you lie. You tell him it was nothing, just an old friend from the merchant marine, just a drink, just coincidence. Diego is quiet for a long moment, and then he says something that chills your blood. He says he believes you. He says he trusts you. He says he knows you'd never betray the family. He says he'll see you next week for run number 12. You know he doesn't believe you. You know he's watching. You know that every move you make from now until you're dead is being tracked and logged and evaluated. You know that one wrong step and you're feeding fish. Run number 12 is a trap. You know it's a trap the moment you see the sub. It's a different vessel, smaller, older, less reliable. And the crew is different too. New faces, harder eyes. Men who don't speak to you, men who watch you like you're the cargo. You're 3 days out from Colombia when the engines fail, not accidentally, deliberately. Someone sabotaged the fuel system. Someone wanted you dead in the water. Someone wanted to see how you'd react. You spend 48 hours drifting in the Caribbean, baking in the heat, running out of water, watching your crew get more desperate and more dangerous and more convinced that you're the reason they're all going to die. A fishing boat picks you up, a real fishing boat, not cartel, just poor fishermen who found you floating and saved your life because that's what humans do, because they didn't know who you were or what you'd done or what would happen to them for getting involved. The cartel retrieves you 2 days later, brings you to a safe house in Colombia, sits you in a room with no windows and asks you questions for 14 hours straight, the same questions over and over. Who did you talk to? Who did you meet? Who did you tell? Why did the engines fail? Why are you still alive? You tell them the truth, the same truth every time. You don't know. You didn't talk to anyone. You didn't meet anyone. You didn't tell anyone. The engines failed because they're old and the sub is shit and someone should have maintained it better. They let you go. They drive you to a hotel. They tell you to rest. They tell you run 13 is scheduled for next month. They tell you they trust you. They tell you they love you. They tell you your family. You know it's not over. You know they'll never trust you again. You know that every run from now on could be your last. You know that the American is still out there, that the DEA is still watching, that your daughter is still walking home alone every day from a school 3 blocks from her house. You call the number, the one the American gave you. You call it from a pay phone in a town you've never been to. You call it at 3 in the morning when you're sure no one's watching. You call it, and you say you're in. The next 6 months are the most terrifying of your life. You wear a wire on 3 separate runs. You record conversations with Diego, with the engineers, with the Colombian suppliers, with the European buyers. You feed information to the DEA. You help them build a case against an organization that spans 4 continents and moves 50 tons of cocaine a year. You learn things you wish you didn't know, like how the money gets laundered through real estate in Miami and art in London and cryptocurrency in Dubai. Like how many politicians are on the payroll, like how many judges, like how many cops, like how many normal people with normal lives are part of something that destroys millions of other normal people with normal lives. The takedown happens on a Tuesday, simultaneous raids in 12 countries, 147 arrests, 8 tons of cocaine seized, $200 million in assets frozen, and you're in a safe house in Virginia watching it on CNN with a DA agent who brings you coffee and tells you it's almost over. You get a new identity, a new name, a new life in a new country. You get to see your daughter once a year in a neutral location with armed guards watching. You get to explain to her why you can't come to her graduation or her wedding or the birth of her children. The last thing the DEA tells you before you disappear is that Diego got away. He wasn't in Colombia when the raids happened. He wasn't in any of the 12 countries. He wasn't anywhere they could find him. He's still out there. He's still looking. He's still waiting. You live now in a town you can't name, in a country you can't name, with a name you didn't choose, and every night you check the locks 3 times before bed, and every morning you scan the street for faces you recognize, and every time the phone rings you flinch, and every time you see a man who walks like Diego, you feel your heart stop for just a second. Your daughter is 23 now. She's a lawyer. She defends immigrants. She has no idea who her father really is or what he really did or why he can't come to her apartment for Christmas. You have $2 million left from the $3 million you made, invested in safe things. Boring things, things that won't attract attention, things that will last longer than you will. You're 54 years old and you've been dying slowly for the last 20 years. You just didn't know it until now. That wraps it up for today. The story you just heard is fiction, but somewhere right now, someone is living a version of this nightmare. If this one hit different, drop a comment and tell me which moment got you. I've got more stories like this coming, so hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one. See you in the next one.